present. I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. If you would all please rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Paul, would you please take the roll?
David Schrader.
Here.
David Smith.
Here.
Paul Vanden Langenberg. Here. Doug Will.
Here. Present.
Jennifer Bakke. Tina Johnson.
Here.
Steve Koffel.
Here.
Katie Najarian.
Here.
All right. Our next item is a preview agenda. Are there any changes we need to make to the agenda?
There are none.
All right. Then this is the first of two times for the meeting for public input for members of the public, either in person or online, to make comments. If you're online and would like to make comments, please use the raise your hand feature to be recognized. Those in person, please raise your hand. I will recognize you when you make your comments. If you would please give your name and address for the record and keep your remarks brief. Is there anyone like to be recognized at this time? Please, and just go ahead and step up to the little table we've got there and move a podium. Thanks.
Tracy Finch, West Main Street. I'm coming tonight with a few questions. Hopefully that will lead to some clarification in your safety plan. Your current wording of your plan that has led confusion when it should be clarified. The current plan says the district is prepared to go virtual, but there is no metrics to allow parents to know when this will happen. I understand that the goal is to keep children in school as long as possible, but given the current rise in cases, it would be very helpful to have some questions answered. First, there is a number of cases or a percentage of students and staff infected, quarantining that will cause the school district to go virtual. Will the entire school district go virtual, or will this be handled by a school basis? How will parents be received prior to the school going virtual? With cases at an alarming rate, right here in our school district, it seems that we are moving closer and closer to needing to go virtual. Parents on both sides of the mask debate agree that virtual learning is detrimental to the education and mental health of our children. We can remember back in October 2020 when the vast majority of parents wanted their children back in school. And several parents shared heartbreaking accounts of the difficulty virtual learning caused. The recent push was to make quarantine optional. The main reason behind this push was to keep children in school. Now, with cases rising, we are getting closer to virtual learning again. Looking at the safety plan, there is no prevision of bringing masks back to avoid virtual learning. Why is that? There is nothing between everything is optional and virtual learning. Would it make more sense to have a progressive approach to the mitigation efforts? I have suggested having a compromise in the past, and this is where we would see it. If we had a step in the safety plan that said we would be required to wear a mask in school for a set amount of time, it would provide a buffer between everything optional and virtual learning. Even if you only require masks for a short time, it could add support needed to keep children in our class.
You please draw your remarks.
So let me finish with two questions. First, which is more detrimental to learning and mental health, math or virtual learning? Second, is the board so strongly against masking in schools that you are willing to cause virtual learning, even though it is more detrimental to education and mental health than wearing a mask in school? Thank you.
Thank you. Next in person, please, in the back.
Michelle Stewart, 1403 Schuman Drive. I have quite a few questions, and I still have yet to get answers to questions I emailed back in November in regards to anything that I asked back then. But I am becoming very concerned about the amount of strain that is being put on our teachers in this situation. With the evidence of rising cases within the district and seeing the strain this places on the ability to educate students, why are the only options to help alleviate this are to either go fully virtual or to take away instructional minutes to give staff full days to plan to make up their missed prep time? They need the prep time now, not a month from now and 2 months from now. With staff telling you they feel pressured because of lack of time, why is the go-to option to keep school open to have teachers give up their prep hours to cover other classes? Has the district looked at other districts that are able to not only keep their cases low, but also keep their teachers from burning out and feeling overburdened due to lack of prep time because of providing coverage, to see what it is they are doing to accomplish this? The amount of teachers leaving the field of education is rising. The amount of teachers either switching districts or leaving the field mid-year is also rising. What is the district planning to do to change what they're doing to keep the quality educators in the district? Teacher burnout is one of the leading causes for leaving a district. And the lack of prep time, because it has to be taken away to cover, is one of those leading factors. A lot of teachers are very frustrated with districts that don't use any data, don't use CDC recommendation to make their decisions. And so they're leaving the entire system. What are you doing to fix that in this district? I also am not always receiving a response back when I request information on whether or not my child is considered a close contact. And I'm gonna guess I'm not the only parent that has had this issue. So this tells me that the system that you have in place is not working. What are you going to do to fix that? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in person, please, in front?
Rick Workman, 1549 Waterzone. I wanted to take the opportunity to thank you for the decision to make close contact quarantines a recommendation and not a requirement. I also wanted to take the time to thank you for the flexibility to adopt the shortened household quarantine periods to 5 days, but I'm confused about something. If a parent uses an at-home test to get a positive result on their child, the district has no problem taking them at their word. But when the 5th day comes around, the district requires a release from the health department or a medical provider. Not only does this effort exacerbate the already taxed medical community, but most medical providers will not issue a release for a child that is recovering in a healthy manner without seeing them. Never mind the financial implications. The entire time, we have accepted people at their word about improved symptoms and for the onset of symptoms. But wait, all of a sudden, this policy implies that a parent who's been forthcoming enough to inform you of a positive case and prepared to keep their child at home is going to lie about the date of the test or whether their child has improved symptoms. Really? I don't buy it. This is not the wild, wild west. After all, if the premise was to make it easier for people to comply with the shortened quarantine protocols, then make it stupid simple to comply. This can be done without exacerbating our critical medical community with the busy work that you're requiring them to do because someone somewhere doesn't want to take the parent's timeline for a positive test. If that sounds absolutely ridiculous to you, then maybe it should. I understand that things are challenging for the nursing staff this year, but does it have to be really more complicated than looking at a calendar and scheduling a follow-up call next week to verify improved symptoms? Let's get back to education. Thank you.
Thank you. Please in the back.
This is Topol, W5993 County OT, Watertown. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you for seeing your all smiling faces. But then also to say thank you for keeping the masks off our children and for ending the close contact quarantine. I do hope that continues and does not change and we take any steps backwards. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? If you have somebody online, I'll take them next. All right, online, Chris Finch. Please turn on his microphone.
Thank you. Chris Finch, 1007 West Main Street. I also had a couple of questions about the virtual learning. Given that my daughter has an IEP and needs some special help, it does add a lot of stress to the situation when if we do go virtual. So I guess the questions I would have with that, again, looking for clarity, if we do go virtual, how much notice are we going to give parents? I mean, some of us have a benefit of being able to work from home. Some of us have to try and work things out with our employers. So it makes sense that we would have some sort of advance notice. And then also, how long would virtual learning last? In our safety plan, it says we're prepared to go virtual, but we don't give any more details. We don't give anything that says if we go virtual, it's going to be for a set amount of time, maybe a couple days, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks. Who knows? It doesn't give us any of that. If we think back to the last time we had to go virtual, it was very, very hard on not just the kids, but the families involved as well. So if we do go virtual, please consider putting in some of these extra steps to provide clarity so that we can have that support of knowing, okay, this is when it's going to happen. This is how long it's going to happen. And it gives us that ability to get that target to help support, whether it's mental health and just making sure that we can talk to our employers and get everything set up before it happens. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do not see anyone else online at this time requesting comments. Anyone else in person, please?
I'm Chad Bailey from 804 Linda Lane. I know most of you are aware of the recent media piece which addressed our district sending special needs kids home from school in the middle of the day. And this is just the latest in many examples of a decision to remove kids from a learning environment without a realistic plan to help them avoid learning loss. They're obviously very concerned about the positive PCR tests. Keep in mind, these are the same PCR tests which still cannot discern between the flu and COVID. And it's winter. As we scramble to react to the artificially inflated positive case numbers, it seems apparent to many in the community that the same concern is not afforded to learning mitigation. In parallel conversations, we talk about how to increase enrollment, support accelerated learning, how to spend $7 million in ESSER grants for the benefit of learning, yet we are sending kids home who need in-person learning the most. I hope the irony is glaringly obvious in this situation. Across our student population, special needs students need for in-person guidance and extra help is absolutely critical for any learning to take place. The district may want to consider open enrolling 35 kids with IEPs if it's not possible to staff adequately in meeting their needs. And putting on CNN during a Zoom class does not meet the definition of learning, especially for a special needs student. None of this addresses the topics of student family disruption, emotional impact, or legal compliance, which all of you are very familiar with. I'll conclude with this comment. If we really care about quality education, learning acceleration, and reducing emotional problems in students, we first need to stop perpetuating the damage. This is a choice within our control. The starting point for ending learning loss was and still is providing in-person learning, especially for our special needs students. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else at this time? There will be an opportunity near the end. All right, thank you all. And we will move on to the next item of our agenda, which is announcements and recognition / communication.
I do not have any announcements to share this evening.
Okay,
We may have our student board members, however, present or online. So
Okay.
that looks like a no. All right, thank you, Todd.
I was looking for names I found familiar and I couldn't find them.
and we will move on to strategic discussion. And our first item up is a presentation from Mr. Getz about Leap Elementary.
You got control. So just thank you for having me at board. Just want to give a little update as we're moving forward. Last year, we started to make some good gains and we started to move through. So on the first slide you'll see is our Leap Elementary new logo. We have decided to keep our leopard as our mascot. We wanted to update something that reflected more of where, excuse me, where we are headed and going through. So we had a couple different choices as we go through, but this was the one that made the top when we surveyed students, staff, and families. This was one of them as we go through. Tyler, want to go to the next one? All right, so what is LEAP? And LEAP stands for Lebanon Environmental Agricultural Pathways. And what you'll see up there is actually our vision statement. So we spent time last year getting together, meeting with people who definitely were better wordsmiths than I am. I love coming up with those ideas. So our vision is cultivating responsible citizens and stewards of the land. So we know we want to have those citizens that are well educated, knowing what's going on in current events, but also connected to the community and those stewards of the land. We know that out in the area and other places, we need to use our resources intelligently, and we also need to use them to benefit as we go along. Our mission statement, Leap Elementary, through a strong learning community, is committed to, I gotta get my glasses, engaging all students in meaningful projects-based learning connected with the environment. So one of the things we know is that out there in our school, we have a very strong community, very passionate people, passionate teachers, passionate students within that. And we want to keep engaging that. We know that that's part of what makes a student feel really good. We also want to try and bring back our students who are connected to Lebanon and beyond, and the community and surrounding areas. One of the things that we decided to talk about was meaningful projects and that project-based learning. We know that project-based learning engages the students in their own learning and lets them go above and beyond what we often would expected with it. And we wanted to be able to connect to the environment. We have a great space out there, green spaces that we keep upgrading every single year. And we want to make sure that they're real life. Example of a student last year helping plan the garden. She did all the research about the items that we had, how much space, how much dirt needed to go in there. Did a wonderful job with that. All right. Just a little bit of information about enrollment as we go through. The upside there says we're tracking enrollment in quarterly. We're also tracking open enrollment, the number of students that we have coming in, so that we know one of our goals is to increase enrollment. Right now, currently, we are up 5 students from last year. We are down 2 in open enrollment students, but that wasn't because of them leaving the district. That's because of them moving up in grade levels as we go through. The other part of it is when we talk to parents, we met with the PTO, and I'm going to plan on survey in February here, coming in near the end, is to how are we doing? How are we meeting? Are we meeting expectations? What are we doing? So one first thing we did was we met with the PTO and we set out our phases. What are we going to do? We focus on enrollment growth. We focus on rigorous instruction for all, as talking about our project-based learning. And we also focused on becoming more of that environmental school as we go through. So you'll see one of our goals was to create an outdoor classroom space. Did not hit our deadline. We had plans and everything else. As we go through this school year, didn't start off as we go. And so a few other complications have come along as we get the space, but we are set and ready to go for spring. Hopefully, Bill and I will be able to work together to get that accomplished here shortly as we go through. Up on the upper right-hand corner, you'll see is our flyer. I attended the Lebanon auction, which I had never attended before, and that was a great experience. I was in the same space as the Lebanon Little League, and we were handing out flyers and small little keychains to any student or any kid who came around from that area, trying to encourage LEAP. We are also currently trying to work in getting them out in a couple of different locations out in that area, and do have a plan as a staff to start to hit the community events as they're coming back up and going through that. Next slide, please. Curriculum focus as we go through. Reading and mathematics are the same as any elementary school. We use the everyday math and we use the font smell to see good things. The difference really is that focus on social studies and science is as we're looking at building the project-based learning capacity within that. And the best way I can understand project-based learning is not necessarily just having everyone design the exact same project. It's having the kids learn about it. The best way I often think about it is like giving a cake. If it says like a science fair, you say, okay, here, make your 3-fold board, and you go through and you have kind of the recipe for the cake. Project-based learning is learning what the recipe for a cake is. You may know all the ingredients that go into it, but you're not going to necessarily know what the final project is until that comes out. Sometimes there's going to be failure, but other times, and you learn from that, other times you get a beautiful cake and you learn all the elements that go into that. The staff that was employed at the time during the summer in August got to spend virtually time at the project-based or PBL, Project-Based Learning World Conference. You know, we'd rather go out to Napa, but we didn't think that would be really sensible unless, you know, we took school board members with us, right? But we did do that virtually as they went through. So we are doing that. We are meeting. One of the project-based learning things that we're going to do is on the next slide. So as we talk about that project-based learning, we really want to focus with the staff as we make sure we cover this with fidelity and do it right the first time as we're rolling out. So we've been planning. We did have a staff member switch at the beginning of the year, which has made it a little bit more difficult as we get going because they don't have the background as much. But we are meeting next Monday night. We are starting one of our first projects, and it's going to be a school pollinator garden. So we've really started to design what K1 is going to be researching and looking at those types of pollinators. 2 and 3 are going to really research the type of prairie plants or plants and pollinator plants that we like in there to show what's going on. And then 4 and 5 is going to take a focus on the whole entire project, and they're going to find ways to present the information that they found out. They're going to focus on those math standards, area and perimeter, and also figuring out costs with plants and seeds and all kinds of different ones, along with the calendar that's needed. On the picture on the right is you see a donated greenhouse to us that we are in the process that will be used to start some of our pollinator gardens there. Go ahead, next one. Community and school connections, we know are really out there. A lot of great community members, like all of our Watertown, really supporting our schools. We have every year a local family give a presentation on maple syrup as we go through. Over in Sugar Island they are from. You'll also see in the upper right-hand corner, we had a community members donate a wonderful one-of-a-kind table with benches that's for our outdoor classroom that was used during the spring last year to get out and enjoy the wonderful area. It was off for a little bit over by our bird feeders that we have. We keep track of our fractions by bird feeders. We've got them broken up into 8. We have the FFA coming over to do a presentation about the perfect food as we go through, and we're really starting to build that FFA connection out there. A lot of FFA members have come from the Lebanon area as we go through. And Jessica Jones and I are in the process of planning an Earth Day celebration. It's called Feeding America. It's kind of almost like the Day on the Farm kind of ones. Lots of presentations done by the FFA members and really to promote the great things that are happening out there. We hope to give you more information as that gets closer and planning gets finalized as we go through that. One of the cool items is we make sure that our environmental focus and agricultural focus goes throughout all of our content areas. You'll see the lovely work that Mrs. Templin does, our teacher out there. The up top pictures are all native plants that the 4th and 5th graders researched, and then we're able to create a picture and painting of. On the outside of it, it is actually cardboard painted with gold paint. She reuses all of the cardboard that she had on there in recycling. The bottom picture, actually, if you can look, we are using the tops of the foam containers that lunches come in, and they're using that. It works out perfectly for print styrofoam. The printing one is go through, Ms. Templin said you pay an arm and a leg for it if you order it as Amazon as printing foam, but if you use it as a lunch container, it's a lot easier. So you see kids are drawing and getting the picture of starting to use the foam there. She also did a project with the kindergartners and first graders out there making 3D models of their house and home different things or houses that they want. And she was able to use a floral cutter to cut out the actual individual pieces and make 3D ones to it. So it's great using the resources that way. Next one. So what's coming next? Our outdoor classroom in the front of school is in the final phases. We just have to finalize a few things. We'll be getting our greenhouses planting and going through. I thought I should have done a fundraiser the other day. It was like -3, -4 degrees. The sun was beating right on the greenhouse. And I went in there and it was like 45 degrees. I could take my coat off, get fresh air, but also be nice and warm. I thought I should sell tickets on that day. And then the last one is just a picture. We got a few fish out there. We'd like to thank Woods and Water in Columbus. They donated perch to us for our tank. Wonderful. And then we also have tropical fish. So we'll do some comparing and contrasting. And we're actually going to get some goldfish and start some aquaponics there as we go through. And I never thought it would be as fascinating as our K1 love to read to our fish. Those fish have gotten so many stories read to them, and they're so engaged with showing them pictures and everything. It kind of surprised me at the first one, but it was great to see it, and it really calms them down too. So that is the lead update.
Questions or comments from board members? Please, Kate.
What is capacity at Lebanon?
It would be right around 70. We really want to go with the district average as we go through, and that would be around 23 kids.
So, how many students will be, or what is the projected goal for open enrolled students as far as the growth factor is? What would be a target or a projection of what we need for that?
As far as just growth from students outside the district?
Yeah, growth from students in open enrollment in the district to go to LEAP.
I would hope for at least 5 to 6 for next year, and then growing from there up to 10 in the following years coming up.
Thank you.
I know it's optimistic, but if you look at some of Husterford's district now, and like other districts, when we start to pull, we're actually closer than they are into that one.
We are.
They may have been. We won't go into that. May have been handing out flyers at a wrestling tournament, but that's okay. So,
Other comments or questions from board members? So Doug and I had the opportunity to be out at Lebanon last Friday, and though, of course, a lot of it's under snow, but still you can see it taking shape. And obviously this is not the most ideal conditions in which to start a new school concept, but they are making it work. And I think there's a promising start here.
thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Right, our next item up is our audit report. Mr. Williamson, and as our guest, we have Chuck Krieger.
So with all due respect to Mr. Getz and Leap, I think this is why most of you are here for our audit report update. And Chuck is here from Hawkins and Nash to entertain us all. I told him to keep it under an hour. If I could just say, coming in new in July and kind of, maybe freaking out a little bit, like what are the auditors gonna ask? Stacy, Riedel, Jamie Fisher take the brunt of the audit. And I've never gotten so few questions from the auditor because they were able to work through the two of them, and it was fantastic. And very few journal entry corrections, and Stacy is typically so good with understanding what needs to happen at year end. So Chuck, if you have something different to say, you certainly can, but that was my takeaway.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
We can hear you, Chuck. You're good.
Okay, I'm on the road. I mentioned to Mike this morning, I'm currently in North Carolina. My son and daughter-in-law welcomed their second granddaughter this morning, so that's why I'm on the road. A little early, only 4 pounds 10 ounces, but she's doing fine. So anyway, so I'm going to spend a few minutes going over the audit. I guess to echo Mike's comments early on, Stacy and Jamie and the whole crew there in the business office really do a good job. And I guess I don't want to say shielding Mike, but shielding Mike from questions. No, they're able to answer questions relatively well. And next year it may be that we have some questions for Mike. Hopefully, yes. But we thoroughly enjoy working with the staff there. Like I said, Jamie and Stacy and the whole crew are very cooperative, very helpful. You got a good crew there. So without further ado, let's get into the audit report. Now I'm looking at the PDF. So when I refer to pages, I will try and refer to both the page number in the PDF and the actual page number in the hard copy, if you will, or the paper copy. So I'm going to start on page 4 of the PDF or page 3 of the actual report. This is the auditor's opinion. It's a clean opinion. It's the best opinion you can get. It's the same opinion we've given you for many years. Again, it says that everything's done materially correct. Okay. And I know I mentioned this in the past, but it bears repeating. We do not look at every transaction. And, frankly, we wouldn't want to spend the time for that, or you wouldn't want to spend the money to have us do that. We do enough to satisfy ourselves that items are materially correct. And it's, the auditor's report, it's independent. So we have no ties to the district other than doing the audit. Management has some responsibility. We have some responsibility. And then at the top of page 5 of the PDF, it's the opinion. And that's where I refer to the clean opinion. Now be aware that next year, the auditor's opinion is going to look different. There's some new standards that we're subject to. And it's going to actually have the opinion at the beginning of the report, not halfway down, because really people are interested in what the opinion is. And then we will give some auditor responsibility and management responsibility. So again, a clean opinion. After that, if you look at page 8 through roughly, probably around 15, this is your management discussion and analysis. Again, this is what I kind of call the Reader's Digest version of your financial statements. There's some financial highlights there. It kind of gives an overview of how things went for the year. And not a lot of detail, but it gives some numbers and it kind of gives you some background information. So if you look at page 11, this is your condensed statement of net position. If you're it's 11 in the PDF and 9 in your hard copy. This is really what in commercial terms would be the balance sheet. Shows you current and other assets, capital assets. And then you have these crazy things called deferred outflows and deferred inflows. Those will turn into assets and turn into liabilities at some later date. And then your long-term liabilities and your net position is kind of what your equity would be. The top part is what you own, the middle is what you owe, and the end is what you have left. If you go to the next page, this shows you major sources of revenue and major expenses. Again, your major revenue sources are property taxes and state and federal aid. Now you'll also see some operating grants and contributions. Some of those are stuff like special ed aid that are specific to a program. Food service revenue from the federal government specific to your food service. So that is in the operating grants. The general revenues for state and federal aid would be like general aid that state gives, per pupil instruction aid, some of those type of things. And property taxes, obviously, what you levy each year. Major categories of expense: instruction, pupil and sports services, administration, and business. Just a couple of comments. In instruction, you're running at about 56-57% of your expenditures. That's a good number. The districts we do in Manitowoc run from 54 to 62. So you're kind of in the middle there. If you look at And then you have some, you have good fund balance at the end of the year, which allows you to avoid short-term borrow, because you have enough cash flow to pay your bills and your wages and salaries, even if you have sporadic times when the money from the state comes in. You know, they don't give you a check every week. The federal government doesn't cut you a check every week to pay your bills. You have to budget for that, and you have adequate fund balance to be able to do that and not have to borrow short term. If you look at page 15 of your PDF, here's your capital assets. Not much going on there this year. Mostly just the depreciation. You didn't add a lot of fixed assets last year. And if you go to the next page, that's your long-term debt. And again, not much going on there. Really what you did was you paid your scheduled debt payments during the year. One thing to note, you know, you do have long-term debt, and you also have post-employment liabilities for health insurance for employees once they retire for a certain number of years. And that you're funding on a pay-as-you-go basis. So if we just jump along to, if we go to page 20 of the PDF, just a couple of items to note here. This is really just a little more detail from what we already talked about, but again, this year, your Wisconsin retirement system, the Wisconsin retirement system obviously pays retirement benefits for people who have finished their teaching career, and accumulate assets for those that are still teaching and will be retired in the future. You always look to see what kind of position they're in, and currently the Wisconsin retirement system is funded at 105% of expected benefits. That's an excellent funding ratio. I suspect that Wisconsin's in the top 5 in the nation with their funding. And really, even if there's a down market or the funding falls a little bit, they're generally in the upper 90% of the funded. So it shows that there's a asset in the net position of Wisconsin retirement system to the tune of $9 million. You can't go out and spend that, but it's just kind of showing you that the Wisconsin retirement system has a net asset position, not a deficit where you would, in theory, be underfunded and have potentially higher contribution rates in the future. So again, the Wisconsin retirement system in really good shape. I suspect California, Illinois, and some others would be ecstatic to have the kind of system that we have in Wisconsin for retirement for public employees. And then if you go a couple of pages farther, you have your balance sheet on page 23. This is kind of what you would typically see in your monthly reports, assets, liabilities, and the next page is your revenues and expenditures. One thing to note, due to a change in accounting principle, in the past, we had the student activity funds in a separate fund, and it was called a student activity custodial fund or fiduciary fund. Well, since the district does exercise some control over that via having faculty advisors and such, we're required to move that into the district's books. And if you go to page 24 of the PDF, page 18 in the financials, you'll see there's a second to last line kind of to the right. There's a change in accounting principle, about $390,000. That's just moving your student activity funds from a fiduciary capacity into the district. Now, the activity fund does not affect your state aid. It's strictly where it's reported on your financial statements. Students continue to operate them as they see fit, as they operate by the guidelines the district has promoted, and with faculty advisors and such giving advice. And so if you go a couple of pages further, you will see there's no student activity listed anymore. And your statement of net position for fiduciary fund is empty. That was, you had a small trust fund there, about $2,600. Again, that got shifted over. So you have no fiduciary funds, no custodial funds anymore. After that, it's mostly footnotes. A lot of boilerplate language in here. There's some information on Wisconsin retirement system, goes on for about 4 or 5 pages. Again, shows kind of what you guys have funded, what funding level it's at. And then if you go to page 36 in the, it's probably going to be about 45 in the PDF. Yeah, this is your post-employment, starts on page 43. Note 7, post-employment benefits other than pensions. And this is when I talked about the health insurance for retirees from their potential early retirement age up till the Medicare eligible age. You provide certain retiree benefits, certain percentage. And again, that liability is about $10 million at the end of the year. Again, that's not something you're going to have to go out and pay right now, but you are on a pay-as-you-go. So each year you pay the premiums that are associated with that. And the last thing I want to mention is during the school year, if you go to page 47 of the PDF, self-funded insurance. And as you're well aware, halfway through the year, you discontinued your self-funding and went to a commercial insurance, commercial health insurance, dental funded plan. You know, self-funding is good in good years, but it's bad in bad years. And it really, you know, districts who want to take that risk, they are at risk for it if they have some, you know, some sort of couple of catastrophic cases, what have you. Commercial insurance, in your case, you're not a large district. I mean, you're not tiny, but you're not a large district. And commercial insurance, in your case, probably makes some good sense, just because you have you don't have to worry about how we're going to fund some massive claims. Most of the districts that I have that have self-insurance programs are probably in the $60 million revenue or above range, just as an example. So that's really all I have on the financial statements. You know, if you go further, I said there's always a lot of detail behind there. One other thing, I guess, to note, you know, the food service program, generally in the last year or so, generally you'd have students pay a portion of the cost of food service. In the last year and a half, the federal government picked up the entire tab. So every meal that you guys served, for first meal to a student, was paid for by the federal government and reimbursed at the free meal rate, which is, I mean, it was all due to COVID. And again, you had a lot of, all districts had to make changes due to COVID, from how they were going to deliver meals and making things safe. And, you know, that's where some of the ASU funds come in. So I'm open to questions if you have any.
Thank you, Chuck. Board members, questions for Chuck? I know we did review this at the fiscal management meeting, so some of you may have already had your questions addressed there. Any other questions? Tina, please.
I just had a question, on page 66, where it does the evaluation, and pardon me if you went over this during the budget meeting there.
Page 66.
Yeah, page 66.
Are you going by the PDF or what's the actual page number?
Yeah, that would, because there's only about 57 pages in the entire, in the hard copy, actually numbered
Okay.
page. Okay, so page 66.
Eighth, I think, page 58, maybe,
58.
56.
56.
There we go.
There we
Bingo.
go. 56. Okay. Yep.
And just taking a look at this as far as, you know, evaluating how things are going and things coming together and stuff like that. What does that second section mean as far as the summary of the auditor's results, financial statement, The significant deficiency identified not considered to be material weaknesses. There were some identified.
Okay, so, and Tony's been on the board a long time and he could probably answer this question in place of me, but certainly I will answer it. The only finding that we really have for you is preparation of financial statements. And what that is in a perfect world, the district personnel would prepare the financial statements and we would look at them and say they give them a blessing. As you can see, the financial statements there's a lot of information there. In addition to business office staff provides what's needed to run the district on a monthly basis. But the financial statements have some of those disclosures, let's say on your OPEB healthcare liability or Wisconsin retirement system. And the way I like to describe this is you could have staff there become knowledgeable and be able to do the financial statements. But as I mentioned, the statements change. Like this year, there was a change. Next year, there'll be another change. And to keep your staff up on those changes, you would have to invest funds every year to have them do continuing education. On the other hand, with us preparing the financial statements, we're able to spread that cost over a multitude of clients. So most of my clients have the auditor prepare the financial statements, and we're required to give you a significant deficiency because of your inability to prepare them. Now, it's not to reflect poorly on the business office at all. If in a Manitowoc office, we probably do in excess of 100 audits. And I would say 98%, maybe 99% of them get this same finding. Okay, because
The
there's
state standard would say would want every municipality and every school district in the state to hire one more person for the financial offices in order to prepare these annual financial statements.
Right.
That's what they'd like to have happen. Instead, we go out and hire Chuck to do it.
Yeah, and
Thank you. I read about that in the following explanation of this fabulous 68-page document.
yeah,
But I
and
can see any colorful charts and graphs.
yeah, I guess as way of explanation, and it's not just government auditing standards and government entities. I do a lot of not-for-profit accounting, auditing, okay? And they have even, if any of you are on not-for-profit boards, you know that you have even less resources than school districts and local governments. Again, I have this same finding for, I think, nearly all of my not-for-profit clients also. Good
All right, any
question.
other questions? Mike, anything else to add?
Nope.
All right, Chuck, then again, thank you very much for joining us. And again, congratulations on your new grandchild.
Yes, thank you. And obviously, if there are any questions later on somebody thinks of, I always offer, get them to Mike or the business office. He will get them to me and I will respond as needed.
All right,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, our next item of business is open enrollment seat availability. Mr. Williamson?
So I'll just briefly speak to the open enrollment piece, specific to the regular education side of it. Same thing as last year. We are opening up the regular education, open enrollment side is wide open again. Again, we know that we are in a declining enrollment and there is physical space available. It would depend upon, of course, the number of inflow that would come in, of whether staff would need to be brought on, but we really haven't had that as an issue yet. We also have, of course, eCampus and allowing as many students that want to come in and open enroll. If it be that eCampus is the only option, then we would offer that to them if there would be a space issue. So much like last year, just for your own information, I just looked it up again today just to make sure I'm portal out there. We have an FTE out right now of, let's see here, open enrollment out FTE of around 360. And an open enrollment in of an FTE. Sorry. Of 80. And so really what we care about is that net position. Every year the dollars typically increase for an in and out student that we have to either pay out or bring in. It's 8,100-ish this year, expected to go to 8,200-ish next year, at 13,000 for special ed. But really, in the end of the day, we care about the net position of that difference. But on the special ed side, through looking at caseloads and formulas and staffing, we are opening 28 seats for special education. Again, if you'd be able to fill those without a net out, 28 times 13,000. Determine some additional revenue there, but really it's about the space and what we have available to educate those students that may want to come into Watertown. Jenny, anything to add?
35.
Yep, 35. So I'm totally on top of this. So 35, not the 28 that I originally saw. 35. That was last week. My apologies. 35.
All right, questions or comments? Again, there is a resolution on this for the agenda. Okay. Thank you. Then our next item is the Safe Schools update.
Go ahead, you can scroll down to the first slide on there. Oh, go under that. So what has been going well? We have been able to continue to provide face-to-face instruction despite challenging circumstances. Over the past month, we have seen a surge in our COVID case numbers. We've been working really hard in terms of our staffing to keep kids in school to the very best of our ability, and we have been able to do that. We've seen any number of districts who have had to transition schools or even full districts to virtual, and at this time we have not had to take that pathway, and we are working very hard to sustain that. I just want to really say the principals have been absolutely fantastic in terms of coordinating those efforts, and our staff has been amazing in terms of providing coverage, moving from classroom to classroom. Staff who are not traditionally serving in classrooms, counselors, are coming into classrooms and providing support so that we can keep our doors open and keep our classes face to face. So staff has been fantastic. Our principals have been amazing. We are in very regular communication regarding attendance and staffing. And again, happy to have been able to keep our doors open to the great majority of our students over these past several weeks. You can go ahead to the next. And what has been challenging? In the month of January, we have definitely experienced a surge in our COVID-19 cases for both students and staff. This has created real challenges for staffing our sites and increased absent rates for students and for staff. We are experiencing about a 75% attendance rate up to about 85% over these past few weeks. Again, that's a considerable percentage of our students out of school on any given day. Our sub-fill rate has dropped to below 50% on most days. And this means that, again, we are providing internal coverage for classrooms. This means that teachers are losing their preparation times, which also provides that critical instruction planning time. So while we've been able to keep our doors open, we know that that comes at a cost as we are requiring that additional coverage. And as I've shared virtually every month,
We are continuing to experience staffing shortages for substitute teachers, custodial staff, bus drivers, crossing guards, and paraprofessionals, which again is putting pressure on our staff. I've shared this in the past months, again, experiencing some challenges regarding student behaviors and learning. We can go ahead to the next slide. So what are we doing to address this? Again, most of what's in this slide I have covered over the past months, but providing on-site testing has helped our staff and students avoid long delays for testing and test results, and the testing is free to staff and students. We have seen this resource used getting in about 50 plus tests in a day over the past few weeks. So we know this has been a tremendous asset to our students and families. We are also seeing those cases come back at about a 40% positive rate. So again, getting that information back to our families so we can respond in as timely a manner as possible has repeatedly been expressed by both families and staff as a really valuable resource, as it's very difficult to get those testing results back. We were experiencing a delay 2 weeks ago. It was taking closer to 72 hours to get those test results back. Typically, we were seeing them back in 24 hours. We are now back to seeing those coming back in about 24 hours. We have worked with the HR committee this past month to propose 2 planning days for teachers on February 21st, which would fall alongside a weekend and a professional development day to serve as conveniently as possible for the families that we serve, creating a 4-day weekend for families, and also creating a really needed opportunity for teachers to plan, and March 25th, which would extend spring break for our families, and again would provide a really critical opportunity for our teachers to plan. We know that this is not a perfect solution, and it does not offset the additional time and stress on our staff at this time, but I've heard from many staff who have seen this resolution coming forward that it helps them to feel heard by the board and by the administration, and helps them understand that while this has been a really difficult and challenging time, their concerns are being heard and there are attempts to address them. We have also worked with the HR committee again this month to provide additional incentives for substitute teachers, increasing the rate of pay again for substitute teachers, and to hire additional substitute positions to help to provide support for our students and for our staff. Again, we've done that basically every month throughout the course of the year. We still haven't quite hit the number that we need to hit to be able to execute as effectively as possible. So we are continuing to expand that resource, and we are hopeful. We've already got some applicants for some of those positions that we will again be able to better offset those absences that are coming into the district.
How many positions is on it?
Margaret, do you know how many positions we have overall for those substitute positions?
4 at the elementary, and then 1 at RMS and 1 at high school.
For those super sub positions? And then we also have the
High school and RMS both also have a full-time contracted building substitute. So the super sub is in addition to that full-time 1-year contract.
And the super sub is our invented term, not an official term. And that is essentially paying a long-term sub cost to a regular sub to help encourage those subs to be in the district on a daily basis instead of alternating with other districts. We did implement that at the elementary, saw some success, and now are looking at expanding it to additional supports.
And we do have some minimum attendance expectations and some expectations that they go to wherever the greatest need is. So, you know, I mean, we really limited the ability to turn down assignments in exchange for the long-term sub.
And I will cover this last bullet on here, which has been on here a few months, but I know there are a few questions about it this evening. We plan to continue to offer face-to-face instruction for our students. We are prepared to transition if needed to a virtual environment. If we did need to transition to a virtual environment, our hope would be able to do that and provide resources to students before they went home on that day. So we would be able to quickly transition if that were to be possible. We would need 1 day of virtual / asynchronous learning before we would be able to transition fully into virtual programming. Again, it is something we have not done this school year, but it is something that we have the devices and are prepared to do should that need arise.
There was a question from somebody about notification,
Mhm.
early notification.
We would certainly notify our families as quickly as we possibly could. And the intention would be to give at least 1 day before we were going to make that transition for families. The conditions that are causing us to make some transitions to virtual are twofold. One is staffing, just being able to have the staffing for coverage. So sometimes that's a little bit difficult to anticipate how our staffing is going to continue to roll day to day to day. And also numbers of positive cases in particular classrooms or cases where we are suspecting that there is a spread in a particular classroom due to the number of cases in that classroom. So those are the circumstances. Now the turnaround time is very, very quick with these 5 days. So again, it becomes difficult to anticipate exactly what the future is going to hold as you're continuing to get those return dates back in very, very quickly. In many ways, that's been helpful in terms of getting our staff back and getting our students back. But it also makes all of those transitions just a little bit more difficult to anticipate. It would certainly be our intentions to inform our families as quickly as we possibly could.
So to clarify, for the what I hear you, when I hear people talk about it, I think commonly in the public's mind, they're thinking about a whole building or even a whole district going virtual. What I hear you describing is a classroom by classroom evaluation and basis. And to your mind, at this point, we've not reached anything that is causing you to say, hey, we need to be looking at whole buildings, let alone a full district.
Correct. We worked very, very hard to transition the smallest possible environment, which right now is really like the classroom level, to virtual when that need arises, again, based on staffing, based on possible cases. Should we need to make a larger transition, that communication would come out as early as possible, as well as the communications that we're doing right now when we do need to transition an environment. Again, it's never enjoyable to be making those phone calls to parents. We know it's really challenging for them to find childcare for their students and to find alternatives. So again, we are working every possible angle to staff classrooms when possible and to keep them open whenever possible.
Most of those classrooms are done for a day, 2, 3. What's the longest we've done so far? It's been
at very short turnaround times, again, especially now with the 5 days in terms of when people can return to the classrooms. So I think 3 days is probably, I can't think of any situation where it's been longer than 3 days that we've had to transition to a virtual situation. And I would not, and that was, I think, even earlier in the school year when we had the 10-day out. So I would not anticipate longer than that period of time.
I mean, the ones that the special ed classrooms that were done last week are going to be, they're back tomorrow. So they're going to be a day and a half kind of a thing.
Correct. They will be back in session tomorrow, face to face.
All right.
Safety plan updates. We did a number of safety plan updates based on the new isolation and the new quarantine guidance. The plan has been updated to reflect that. We did send a family communication on isolation on January 4th. We had hoped to send out our weekly newsletter this past week, but we are our quarterly newsletter this past week, but that is delayed. So that's going to be coming out this week. Therefore, we sent our family communication out separately on Thursday of last week. We have updated our family letter regarding quarantine and close contact tracing, and updated the isolation and quarantine guidance throughout the safety plan. We've also updated the Can I Go to School or Work document to reflect the new vaccination recommendations from the CDC. As I've shared every month, we're posting our COVID-19 data to our website. And it is also available, it's also wise to track that DHS Wisconsin website, which shares the school district overall numbers. And that's everyone living in the school district, not just school-age children. Questions?
Tina, please.
Actually, I have a number of them.
Okay.
So when I'm taking a look at the first page there, as far as what has been going well, like what's our measure for that?
Can you scroll back, Tyler, so I can look at what that first page is?
First page.
The first, well, the second one, yeah. So can you,
What's been going well? Like, because when I'm taking a look at that, maximizing distance when possible, there's been a lot of issues with that hasn't been followed. So I would say in a lot of respects, that hasn't been going well. So what is our measure? Like, have things changed a lot from the last meeting, or?
I would say, as I've shared previously, really in January, we revisited with all of our administrative team and with all of our staff, the really importance of ensuring that all of our safety plan protocols were in place. I know that there have been times when people haven't paid as much attention to some of those points as we would have liked. And again, I feel like our staff is really working very hard to make our schools safe, and our principals are working very hard to make our schools safe. And we felt like it was important to revisit that and remember that, and remember that vigilance was really going to be important, especially as we anticipated we were going to get some higher case numbers coming in. And then as we saw that come to fruition, and not only COVID cases, but illness that's out in the community as well.
So if we're looking at distancing, like I'm guessing it was like last year, like we were so conscientious about distancing. Elementary, classrooms were reconfigured and tables were taken out, or however it went. Is it back to that? Because we didn't start the year necessarily like that. And it wasn't like that at, other buildings and things like that. That, RMS last year, I think, was like lunchroom every other, things like that. Are we back to those things?
At RMS and WHS, I know they still have marked off in their cafeterias, and they have table seating expectations. Again, at the time that the board was looking at the safety plan, really the expectation was to more generalize that language into maximizing distance, and that is what we have communicated with our staff, that we should be utilizing every opportunity to maximize distance in our classrooms, in our cafeterias, to prevent spread. And I don't know if any of the principals wanted to speak to that at all, and I don't want to put you on the spot. It looks like maybe no.
So again, I think that, if I may add a moment, so again, having toured the buildings again very recently, what I see different compared to last spring is that it's obvious that over the summer, they again took every opportunity to push things to the corners where can, like squeeze every square foot. You used to be, you walk into a room, desks would be fairly concentrated in one space, you have open space for other activities, and clearly that mindset of spreading out into the room.
I also know, like teachers weren't necessarily putting the empty desks in the middle, those were on the ends and things like that. So I know that it hasn't necessarily always been that way. And I guess I was just concerned because, what I've heard from, because obviously we have a lack of staff. And so the concern becomes, I guess probably mainly at the elementary level, when you're combining classrooms. I get we're trying to do what we can, but just to know that not having the staff also affects, the distancing that we're able to do, that we say we're, working to do that. I guess in taking a look to what is our usual absence rate, like pre-COVID era?
Our average attendance rate is 94.1%. And that's taken from pre-COVID. So we've
Right.
used that as a factor to measure against where we're at now.
So when I'm taking a look at, I mean, I know we all like, okay, in student, face-to-face learning is the best for students. Okay, we can all agree to that. However, when I take a look at the data as far as like at what cost, it's one thing to say, yes, we're providing face-to-face instruction. However, the quality, I really have to, and it's not a teacher issue, it's a situation issue. And when I take a look at if our usual absence rate is 6%, right now we're running 15 to 25% absent. And it seems like to me, when you have probably 12 to 17 average staff that are out, or what's the average
I
per
would-
building?
Are you talking about right now or are you talking about per usual? Right now, we have more than that amount of staff out on any given day. Margaret, 50
That's good, yeah.
out of 500
Yeah.
plus employees about.
So
50.
when she's saying staff there, that's not just teachers.
Yes.
Right.
Paraprofessionals.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, they provide educational support.
So 10%.
So I guess I'm taking a look at this, that usually it's 6%.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, Doug is just making the point that it's 10% that are out in terms of staff as opposed to 25%, and that is an accurate point. We are much closer to 10% than 25% of staff, although we are, for example, at RMS, last week saw about a 25% absent rate for students.
Correct. Okay, thank you for that clarification. So I guess I'm taking a look at, we have the least restrictive safety protocols. I looked up CDC and all this kind of stuff. They still recommend masks and distancing. And I get it. Nobody wants to do the mask. I shouldn't say nobody, because that's not true. But when we're taking a look at what cost, the way that we have things right now, 25% of kids are missing out on instruction. Not 15 to 25% of kids are missing out on instruction, which we deem important. Plus you have 10% of staff out. You have combining classrooms. You have counselors that are covering classrooms. So that means that they're not able to do their counseling duties. So then that affects, we're taking a look at, some other districts. Okay, well, yes, they go virtual because they have a threshold. Like, what is when we say how are we responding and preparing? When we take a look at that, should we need to make a transition? Like, do we have any kind of a threshold or any standard that because it seems pretty much like a crisis now, like, okay, obviously it means that either we should go virtual for 5 days or 10 days or require masks if we don't want to go virtual.
And I would share, I have been in communication with the health department pretty regularly, and I know that their commitment, like our commitment, is to try to keep kids in school as much as we possibly can. We did talk last Friday. I spoke with the health department because our cases were very high on Friday, and we didn't know what to anticipate over the weekend. Monday, we had all of our health assistants come to the ESC so we could look at all the cases that had come in over the weekend and reconfigure those percentages and see where we were going to be at going into this week and if we needed to make any additional transitions or changes. Our cases were a much lower number than what we had seen last week. That doesn't mean they'll stay low, but that means right now they were much lower than what we had seen.
Friday, we weren't available for testing either.
Correct, but we did have testing today and it was a lower number of tests that were given as well today, which for whatever reason is the case. So therefore, we also, the percents are very, they move very quickly right now because frequently we're getting the cases after kids are even able to report back to school because of the 5-day really short turnaround. So those percentages are moving very quickly, much more quickly than they were when we had that 10-day. So it's a little bit more difficult to track it as the volume of cases comes in and then as you have to determine the flow in and out. So Monday, we wanted to take a really good look at that. Based on the data that we had coming in Monday, we anticipate that on Tuesday, we'll have better attendance for students and better attendance for staff. I am consulting on a daily basis with the principals regarding attendance and regarding staffing. We are making transitions where we feel that we need to make transitions while keeping our doors open to the very best of our ability. Is it ideal? Is it what we would like to see? We would like to see 100% attendance on any given day. We would like to see all of our students, all of our staff healthy and safe at school every day. That is not the case right now, but we believe that serving that 75% is important, even in those difficult times. I recognize the desire for a threshold number. I do think it is something that, the board can, certainly consider doing. I do think it is a little bit more difficult to do now than it was a couple months ago.
If I could add to that, again, one of the reasons why I went out to the buildings last week was to get a better firsthand understanding of what's going on. And if there's one way, two ways I could describe what I saw besides the stress and seen and heard about, it is uneven. From building to building, the effects and conditions were very different. And within buildings, from classroom to classroom, the effects were very different. You could have classrooms in the same building where one classroom might have 1 or 2 students out, and you could have classrooms where you had 6. And as an average, it gives you one story, but on the ground, when you see it, it is a more complex story.
I guess I just want to clearly understand that there's no threshold set. And if we're not taking action, like basically to either go virtual or, go with masks, we're okay with a 15 to 25% absence rate.
I don't want to say I'm okay with that absence rate. I mean, I certainly think we want our kids in school.
Right.
We want our staff
right.
here, 100%. And I appreciate the concern and I appreciate the frustration. I really do. We want our kids back. We want to continue to provide a really high quality education in a face-to-face environment.
I guess I would say something about, I know it's always nice to have, okay, what's the threshold? Because it gives somebody a visual, but I mean, at least, not necessarily having a threshold gives a little bit of flexibility, to be able to maneuver without having to be caught in the box. But even though I understand the threshold idea, but gives you some flexibility to move things around again, especially since it's been going from, we're looking at like classroom to classroom rather than big building.
I do just really want to share that I really do believe that the health department wants to see us continue to offer face-to-face learning as well.
I'm
based
sure
on-
they do, but they also want us to do, distancing and face covering. So, you can't have all of that, or we're not willing to do all of that. So, I mean,
I understand that.
But Dave,
To me, the idea of threshold, I don't know exactly where, Tina, you got your 15 to 25, but my guess is there was a day that was 25 and a day or two later it was 15. And I think that's what makes the threshold idea so difficult to me is, again, I don't want to say okay with anything here, but if I say 15 is okay, but 25 is not, but by the time we say, well, we hit 15, and we implement it, we give a day off, then we start virtual, we're back at 15 again. So it's like those numbers move so fast that to me, allowing us to do it at the smallest possible level seems to give us the best scenario. Yes, it really isn't desirable when we have to take a classroom or two and send them virtual for a day or two, or send them even just home for a day or two. It really sucks. But we're not doing it to mass people. Likewise, if you take you know, the middle school and what Tony described, and you got, you know, maybe you have one or two of the classroom teachers that are out. Well, that means the other, you know, 5 classrooms are going full bore and going great, and they're able to get great learning. And yeah, there may be 2 classrooms that you have a teacher in there that's not normally teaching that subject and it's subpar, but that's what we're getting if we go virtual. We're getting subpar across the board.
Dave, I'm sorry, let me clarify. I got my numbers from Cassandra as far as student absence goes, and it ranges per building. Best case scenario, 15% are absent, worst case scenario, 25% absent, which is at the middle school. And staffing, I mean, what I've been hearing, some buildings have 12 people out in the same building. Some people have 15 people out in the same building. So that's where the impact, that's what I was referring to.
Those impacts are real, but again, I saw it.
And Tina, from a, call it a private perspective, you know, in my office, there was one out. Well, that's 25%. Well, he was back in 4 days and he carried on. We didn't try to alter our plans. I submit that most of the general public is trying to roll with this, recognizing that the ones who are impacted, whether it be a teacher or a student, the good news is it's 5 days and they're back at it. It's not the same student every single time. It's not the same parent every single time. And the transactional friction of turning on and off the masks and the virtualness of it, as I think Cassandra and Dave alluded to, is it jumps around so much that the ones you're trying to fix today aren't the ones that are broken or won't be broken tomorrow. So part of it is I can appreciate our unwillingness to box ourselves into a corner to try to follow a moving target when compared to the background noise of the community in general. I don't know this, but I would surmise that our numbers are not out of line. It's not like we, the school district or any one particular classroom by itself is a super spreader. I don't have that information off the top of my head, but based off of the people that you probably know and that I know and the number of people coming down with it in the community at large, I would just say that our school district is reflective of that, or at least mirrors it in some way that says, okay, well, what's the greater community doing? Well, they're still quarantining, they're still isolating, and they're still behaving as best as they can, but life moves on. And my office had to continue working and my employees have to keep working, as do I. And I think that we recognize that the teachers and the parents and the students are all sort of facing the same thing. And I'm not 100% sure that if we try to put in a fix here, that it will be fixing anything that isn't, that the, what do you say, the fix may be worse than the problem. So I don't have all the numbers to back that up. It's somewhat supposition as well as just observation. So the ones that Cassandra and her staff have decided to go to a next level, whether it be virtual or masks or separating, they must have had their reasons that it was untenable in the situation that it was. And I still like to leave it in their hands to make those decisions on a case-by-case basis, as opposed to across the board blessing or limiting their ability to make that decision. I mean, I know we want a magic bullet. We want a magic bullet as a society, and we want things in writing when we look at a safety plan. But as Paul just stated, that does take away some of our flexibility to manage situationally. And I'd rather leave that in Cassandra's hands and her staff than expect it to be decided at a school board. I share your concern. 25% absentee is a lot. The good news is it doesn't last.
Cassandra, do we have any breakdown as to that absentee number that is directly positive for COVID, has been family member quarantine, or is just some other absentee?
Yes, we track all of that data. And so we do consider all of those pieces when we're making a decision on transitioning our environment. So yes, we do have all of that information.
But is it like, are you seeing it like 50-50? Is it? I mean, because I know there's a whole lot more than COVID going around the community right now.
Yeah, well, and that's certainly true. And I think it varies by situation. There's definitely, I mean, the number of COVID cases over the past few weeks are definitely the primary source of absence for our students. But there are additional students who are out with other illness. There are additional students who are out on quarantine from a household situation. Certainly we have a spreadsheet that tracks all of that, and I can certainly share that with you. But again, at some of our sites, the percent out with a positive COVID case is higher, some it's lower. And we look at all of those numbers on a daily basis. And as you noted previously, those numbers do shift and change day to day, week to week.
Yes, please, Steve.
Along with what David was saying, I would have to say that I think that the administration's been doing a good job with what we had, considering the hypersensitivity to this whole situation. I think everyone is on pins and needles. This whole idea, and I've said it before, this whole idea of risk aversion has caused, in my estimation, for lack of a better term, mass psychosis to a number of our people. And I think that if you look back honestly in years past at some of the flu epidemics we've had, we've closed down schools, we've closed down classes for a week at a time. And if not for, like I say, the hypersensitivity of this, not everyone that is out is even ill. So I think we don't want to paint ourselves into a box here. I think we're handling the situation appropriately. And again, risk aversion is not a good thing. It's based in fear, and fear, it does not think clearly. And there are so many other mitigating things that we could do that have been suppressed to alleviate the illness in our communities. And as soon as you start talking about that, all of a sudden you are labeled, you're contrary to the narrative. And I think that we are doing a good job given considering the situation. So I think it behooves the citizenry to be proactive and to take their health care personally, be responsible for it personally, and not rely so much on the public discourse. And I think we'll do just fine. We'll get through this okay.
Other comments at this point? Tina, did you want to add?
No, I'm good.
All right, and you were done, sorry, with your safe school presentation.
I am done with the safe schools
Okay.
presentation, and then
All
my
right.
superintendent's report is
We'll
next.
roll
and
right on into the superintendent's report.
Keep going, thank you. This is fairly brief. Another reminder, we do have COVID-19 testing available. Pre-registration is required. It is available from 9 to 3, Monday through Friday at the ESC. And again, it is at no cost for students and staff only. Download the Right Way Bus app. We have had a number of challenges to transportation, and we want to make sure everybody is able to make sure when their bus is going to come and when they can specifically expect it. The Here Comes the Bus app will help you with that. by being able to actually locate your bus and its approximate arrival and departure times. Mr. Williamson.
And I would
looks
just
like
add, the crucial piece that that right way likes about it is the communication piece, that if you have that app, they are the ones that know right away whether a bus is going to be late or whatever the case is, that they'll send a message out through that app to those specific families and students that are affected. So even more so than the GPS, they really like the messaging piece that comes with it.
Does it go the reverse way that the parents could tell the bus company not to pick my child up?
I don't think there's a reverse messaging, but that's possible. Does anyone have it that they know? Oh,
You can't send them.
you can't send it. All right, there you go. I can only.
I just thought that would save some time.
That would save, I will let their app developer know that they should have that
You can
two-way.
take credit for it.
Thanks, Doug.
All right, we can go ahead to the next one. 4K and 5K enrollment will begin on February 1st. We really encourage you to enroll your 4-year-old or your 5-year-old. The sooner the better, so we can start. We know we have the potential for some additional full-day 4K programs that we're really excited about. And knowing our numbers as early as possible will help us determine the very best locations for those full-day 4Ks, so we can best serve the students and families of our community. And all of those enrollments really help us to anticipate our staffing numbers as well. So we really encourage, get out there, enroll. We can't wait to have our new 4K and 5K students coming in through the district. Thank you to St. Paul's Sugar Island Church. They provided all of our SURE students with a beautiful blanket, which was very well received and an unexpected gift. We thank them very much for thinking of us. And in case you did not know, we are hiring bus drivers. Please consider being a bus driver for Right Way or DHS here in the community. We would really support you in making that decision and would love to have your help. And that's all of my report for this evening.
All right, any comments or questions on the superintendent's report? Fiscal management.
Our meeting was January 17th. We had all members present, Doug Will, David Smith, David Schrader, Kenny Jerry. We also had Tony Arnett, Sean, and myself. We went through the payment reports, we discussed, questions came in, we talked about those on the email. Variance reports, just this month provided a memo on some of that breakdown, what I'm looking at when I look at the variance report. We discussed a couple pieces. Mr. Vitale was not at the meeting to discuss the eCampus promotional campaign, although it was discussed at Ed Services and will eventually be brought forward to financial services when a final proposal and dollar amount is there for the committee to see it's completed. Dr. Shug talked about the online tutoring piece that we're looking to roll out. I believe it's a resolution tonight, so we'll get more detail there. Already seen the audit report and what Chuck from Hawkins had to say. We did discuss the ESSER feedback that was received by community and staff from the January 12th, as well as emails that have come in as well about appropriate use, or at least ideas, I should say, of how to best use ESSER and the funds associated with really ESSER 3. We're really just looking at the best way now to move forward with that feedback and potentially having a strategic plan meeting sometime in February. The whole board. That's still being worked out though, but that was what was discussed. Again, a plan doesn't have to be to the state until March. And those dollars are kind of opened up. Gave a furniture update. We have been working with 2 additional vendors to the one that provided us the quote for the insurance. Just as a side note, I did get a second quote today and it is competitive with the original quote. And so we follow through with that particular vendor to see, make sure it's apples to apples. We did discuss the potential for some debt refunding and a long-term strategy. We had 3 possible institutions that are financial institutions come in and discuss either defeasance or refinancing or making large payments in the future. And really, discussion revolved around what's going to be the next steps as far as that goes. So we'll continue to discuss that in February with continued background information. Next month will probably also be a long-term budget. First look at a long-term budget for this year, and so a lot of that strategy will come into place with that. We looked at the 10-year capital improvement plan and kind of had pared it down to a district list. In other words, outside vendors who kind of came with their own facility study. We're moving that off to the side right now to maybe work with some third-party individuals to see what the urgency is of some of the projects specifically that Performance Services gave us. The current 10-year plan, which I really hope to bring next month with the internal projects, is about 1.4 million, probably spread out more like over the course of 3 to 5 years. But when the board approves, if the board does approve that, those projects on there would start to use Fund 46 funds that you have set aside, in essence, to be spent on capital improvement projects that need to be completed. And that wrapped up the meeting. Next one is February 23rd.
Doug, anything you want to add to that?
No.
That's a great point. Comments or questions, board members? All right, thank you. Then we'll move on to Human Resources report.
Human Resources met on the 17th. Those in attendance were myself and Paul Vanden Langenberg. Also present were Tony Arnett, Doug Will, Kate Nigerian, David Schrader, Dave Smith, Cassandra Shug, and Michael Williamson, along with our Human Resources Director, Margaret Brady. Caveat there is these meetings ours was first HR and financial followed, so thus the heavy attendance. So we went through the consent agenda, a review of staff appointments, resignations and terminations. Those we will be voting on in the consent agenda the 24th, this evening, I should say. We then went into the employee assistance program. There, Ms. Brady presented us with 2 different proposals. Margaret, would you want to, one was Expedia, the other one was through Aurora?
Right, we had 2 different bids from Empathia and from Advocate Aurora Healthcare, and we discussed the pros and cons. Primarily the pro with Advocate Aurora being that the providers that come through that service also fit into our current health insurance provider network, so there would be some continuity of services if that was needed. And we talked about the reasons for that as an enhancement to our benefit program, given the current stresses and strains and the individual life challenges that staff have been experiencing, along with just about everyone else in their work life experiences. And this was seen as a resource that would be made available to staff for addressing some of those concerns that we're hearing from staff and from administrators alike. So we did put together a recommendation or a resolution for adopting the program on today's agenda.
Any further questions for us on that? We then discussed the starting pay for our part-time cleaners, the weekend cleaning positions. We have been relatively unsuccessful in retaining men and or women that have bought in for that. We looked at the pay rate mostly because it is weekends and off hours. And we decided that we needed to be more in line with wages paid for such things in the public sector. And we're looking at a $15 per hour pay for that. So we hope that that will help with that issue. Calendar changes, asynchronous days and all. Superintendent Shug went through that a little bit, and I don't, unless there's some questions on that, I think I'll skip past that. That was covered earlier. Also, we went into the incentives for substitute assignments, which was also discussed earlier, and we are looking at increasing the pay for that, and there's going to be a resolution on that later on in the meeting. And with that, we concluded the business for that meeting, and our next meeting will be February 21st at 5:30 p.m.
Thank you. Comments or questions on the report? All right. Ed Services.
Ed Services met on January 11th at 7:30 in the morning. All committee members were present. In addition, Dave Vitale, Dr. Shug, Jenny Boris, Aaron Meyer, and President Tony Arnett was there. Cassandra went through a safety plan update, which today again was much more updated. So what you heard tonight was probably better than what we discussed at the meeting. And then we also had a strategic plan update, eCampus promotional campaign, an RFP review. The committee discussed next steps in highlighting aspects of the eCampus Academy that would potentially result in enrollment growth of eCampus as part of the WUSD strategic plan. Proposals were submitted by 3 advertising agencies that specialize in marketing campaigns. More information will be gathered and shared with the board about specific marketing deliverables and examples of brand development in time for an ad campaign to be launched in the coming weeks as part of our strategic plan steps under enrollment growth. Then we have an extensive report on Future Ready Technology Plan. Involved quite a bit of things here. The CBRS and WSD Madison College Broadband Network Pilot. Dave Vitale shared information about a collaborative effort between our school district and Madison Area Technical College to offer expanded wireless internet access to families and students. The partnership would combine the use of the USD radio towers from its former wireless LAN and MATC's installations of new transmitters that would connect with wireless hotspots distributed on a assigned basis to students. The district would no longer continue to its hotspots service plans with various cellular providers in the area. Formal intergovernmental agreement would be forthcoming. The committee expressed its support for this particular project. In addition, we talked about an RFP for internet phone service out at LEAP. Proposals are being sought from telecommunications companies to upgrade internet and phone service at LEAP School through a lease agreement for fiber optic connectivity. The current DSL service plan has been unstable, resulting in intermittent service outages at the school. The new plan would be eligible for E-rate discounts of between 20 and 90% of the total cost. We talked about server data center consolidation and ransomware protection. Dave Vitale reported that Heartland Business Systems is reviewing the WSD's network infrastructure to identify areas in need of server upgrades and consolidations. This would be a precursor to enhancing the district's data security and ransomware protection. Also, we talked about wireless controller upgrade and E-rate application. Bids are being sought for replacing the school district's wireless access point controllers that are over 10 years old and beginning to fail. The cost of replacing this hardware is eligible for an E-rate discount at a rate of between 20 and 90% as well. The E-rate is the Federal Communications Commission program that supports schools and libraries with technology purchases. We also talked about cybersecurity awareness training. The district is pursuing an agreement with InfoSec, a Wisconsin company that serves schools and organizations with cybersecurity training and awareness for their employees. It was noted that cybersecurity training is linked to insurance coverage in the district's cybersecurity policy. We also talked about online tutoring service pilot. Dr. Shug presented documents highlighting service plans from 2 different online tutoring providers, TutorMe and Paper. For those that, yeah. This was part of a discussion about improving student performance in the wake of learning loss due to disruptions to typical school operations as a result of COVID. A small-scale pilot is proposed to learn more about these services in the event that the Watertown Unified School District finds value in continuing with them in the future. Committee members expressed support for this proposal as well as an interest in identifying a means of measuring the impact of tutoring services on students using them. A resolution will be acted upon at tonight's meeting of the full board. Then we also had the teaching and learning report, which we heard just a little bit about earlier. Open enrollment seats, students with disabilities, the annual requirement. Cheney Borst and Aaron Meyer identified a proposed 35 special education open enrollment seats that would be available to students with disabilities who apply for open enrollment. The 35 students would be spread across several levels. It was noted that students may not be denied open enrollment placement unless the non-resident district identifies a lack of space to accommodate the needs. The district would receive an estimated $13,076 for each open enrolled student that has an IEP, and this compares to about $8,224 for every student that's open enrolled that doesn't have an IEP. The board will vote on a resolution to set the number of open enrolled seats at 35 for students with disabilities at tonight's meeting. With that, just briefly, we had a staff development days. Is there anything you could just say about those that they were after our meeting?
I asked Emily to share a little bit about the elementary responsive classroom. Sure. Our elementary teachers did day 3 of the 4-day elementary core course for responsive classroom this past week, and we had 3 trainers, 2 of which made it here, 1 of which got stuck in Washington DC and had to be virtual, but 1 trainer flew from Vermont to Philadelphia to Chicago to Madison and showed up the next day. So I was very excited. But it was a good day. The focus was engaging academics and the morning meeting component of activities. Also, we discussed quite like student choice, and which is a key component of engagement as well as engaging families. So the teachers had time to like plan and integrate some of the strategies we had learned, such as interactive modeling and role play. So it was a good day. That would be about 90 elementary certified staff that attended that for the full day, and then day 4 is coming up in February. And we're excited for our advanced training coming up this summer too for a select group of people. So.
And then Jason or Josh, would you share a little bit like what happened in your sites?
Sure. So in the morning at the high school, we focused on Avid, which included a large reframing, that since, starting the school year was important to just, get perspective and understand, what the overall goal and, our progress towards that. So we had a nice session, large group session in the morning. And then we split off to individual professional development choice groups the teachers have been engaged in all year. So they had a chance to coordinate and collaborate with those groups, talk about progress and plot out next steps. And then the afternoon was focused on restorative practices and gave teachers a chance to be in those circles as a practice that, and then continue along that path.
Yeah, Riverside, we circled up early in the morning and got kind of reconnected to our community building as a staff. It was nice that the staff got a chance to kind of share how they were feeling in a proactive, nice way with each other. And the importance of allowing kids to do that in the classrooms as we're transitioning back into classes from a slightly longer weekend. We reconnected with our Avid work that we had been committed to over the last 3 years and kind of did a status check for our Avid professional development team, which was excellent. And then using STAR and forward data to instructionally group students. We had training on that, which teachers could take that back into their departments and say, okay, I have 25 kids in my class at this variety of different levels. We have lots of data. Like, what do we do with that? And how can we make instructional choices to hit all levels of learners in our classes? So it was really productive use of our time that morning and afternoon.
Thank you. So with that, we adjourned our meeting at 9:42. Our next meeting is Tuesday, February 8th at 7:30.
Thank you. Comments or questions on that report? A lot of them. Tina, please.
I just wanted to say in the board docs, under reports, the educational services report is a repeat of the financial management report. It was so good that it was in there twice.
Oh, yes, I see the minutes, yes.
The
All right, we'll get that
educational
corrected. Thank
services report is down somewhere in the committee summaries. It was listed down.
It's in there, it just
Yeah.
is not.
Yeah.
I will get that. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Paul. This brings us to the consent agenda, resolution 9077. The consent agenda includes our meeting minutes and committee summaries, as well as staffing actions, that's resignations and hiring. It also includes the approval of bills and first and second reading of policies. As a note, there are no first or second reading of policies on the consent agenda for this evening. Do I hear a motion on the consent agenda?
So move.
Second. Moved by Steve, seconded by Doug. Comments or questions on the motion, please?
Under staffing, personnel and staffing, is it a typo that the same person resigning is hired?
I'm not in that. Margaret, are you able to speak to
I'm
that?
sorry.
The cook, is that person's listed under resigned and hired? I just wanted to make sure it's not.
They have been hired then.
Right, that's
40
what I'm-
difference between
Because the date.
Actually, that is correct. That was a 2-day employment stint for that individual.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Much to our disappointment.
Any other comments or questions on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
Steve Smith,
Yes.
Paul Vanden Langenberg, yes. Doug Will,
Yes.
Tony Arnett,
Yes.
Jennifer Baki, excuse me, she's not here. Tina Johnson,
Yes.
Steve Caulfield,
Yes.
Katie Najarian,
Yes.
David Schrader.
Yes.
And the motion carries. We will then move on to our action items. The first is resolution 9078 for open enrollment seat availability. And you do see it listed in there. Again, that's the 35 seat number. No limitation on regular education, 35 seats in special education as allocated across grade level as noted. Do I hear a motion on 9078?
I'll move.
Second.
Moved by Paul, seconded by Tina. Comments or questions on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
David Smith,
Yes.
Paul Vanden Langenberg, yes. Doug Will,
Yes.
Tony Arnett,
Yes.
Tina Johnson,
Yes.
Steve Caulfield,
Yes.
Katie Najarian,
Yes.
David Schrader.
Yes.
And the motion carries. Next is resolution 9079. This is the order of candidates on the ballot for April for the board positions. Do I hear a motion on 9079?
So move.
Moved by Doug. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved by Tina, second by Tina. And just for those in attendance, the order has been set as Lori Holland, David Schrader, Craig Wortman, Paul Vanden Langenberg, Chad Bailey, and Mike Higgins in that order. Any other comments, questions on the motion?
Any of us on the ballot need to abstain from the
You do
vote?
not?
Okay.
Roll call vote, please.
David Smith,
Yes.
Paul Van Langenberg, yes. Doug Will.
Yes.
Tony Arnett,
Yes.
Tina Johnson,
Yes.
Steve Caulfield,
Yes.
Katie Najarian,
Yes.
David Schrader.
Yes.
And the motion carries. Next is resolution 9080. This is setting teacher planning days on February 21st and March 25th as an adjustment to the calendar. It requires formal board action. Do I hear a motion on 9080?
Second.
Moved by Paul, seconded by Katie. Comments or questions on the motion? Again, this was mentioned in the Safe Schools update, as well as the Ed Services, in the HR. Comments or questions on the motion?
I'd like to make a comment.
Please.
I'd like to encourage us to take this time to plan for any future events that might look like this. To me, our number one reason we're here is for student learning. That's why we're here. That's what we're doing. While we understand we have to balance that with other stakeholders such as staff and parents involved, this resolution takes 2 days away from student learning and gives it to the much needed, without a doubt. Right now at this very moment in time, our staff is stretched beyond stretched, and the planning days are gone. But what we're talking about doing is putting those planning days to plan for the future is what planning is. We're talking about putting those 4 weeks and 8 weeks from now, when we're all very hopeful that this slug has passed by. While I support this, it just is disjointed in how it's really happening.
All right. Any other comments or questions on the motion?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that, I know it's lost time for students, but the teachers are the ones that are teaching the students. So I think they need this. So it's going to work out.
All right. Anything else? Roll call vote, please.
David Smith,
Yes.
Paul Van Langenberg, yes. Doug Will.
Yes.
Tony Arnett,
Yes.
Tina Johnson,
Yes.
Steve Caulfield,
Yes.
Katie Najarian,
Yes.
David Schrader.
Yes.
And the motion carries. Next is resolution 9081, the Employee Assistance Program. Do I hear a motion? Moved by Tina. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Katie. Comments or questions on the motion? Again, this was discussed at the HR.
One comment, just the measuring factor of engagement, use of it. Just so we're conscious of that. It's actually being used. So that's just a comment.
Okay.
I have notes on.
I had already communicated those expectations and the measurement and metrics that we had talked about at HR committee
Very
to
good.
the providers.
Right.
And as a condition of considering that going forward.
Thank you.
And also worth noting that this resolution puts this in place for 1 year. So it's not open-ended. It does have a sunset date that will require 4 officers. If there's nothing else, then we'll do roll call on this motion, please.
David Smith,
Yes.
Paul Van Langenberg, yes. Doug Will,
Yes.
Arnett,
Yes.
Tina Johnson,
Yes.
Steve Caulfield,
Yes.
Katie Najarian,
Yes.
David Schrader.
Yes.
And the motion carries. And our last action item is resolution 9082 for the online tutoring pilot. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by David, seconded by Steve. Comments or questions on the motion? Doug?
I have a comment. I was attended that meeting where this was discussed, and I believe we were talking about having maybe a 500
Yes.
limit. We're gonna do like the minimum rather than the 845.
We had talked about having a transition, a small pilot to transition, and then to move into the larger pilot. I'm still working with tutor.com in terms of what that might look like in terms of a pricing adjustment. They can do monthly pricing adjustments. They did meet the other bid that we had and added on another month in so doing. So I'm working on what the details of that might look like. I don't know that we'll get much more of an additional price adjustment if we do a short pilot. So I wanted to be prepared to do all the seats that we put out there, but again, I'm still working with tutor.com on that.
So the 845 is what we were working on, times the 14, which is roughly like $12,000 per month. is what we're talking.
No, that's for all the months.
For all
That's for the remainder of the school.
performance.
Yes, correct. So it'll be February, March, April, and June, 5 months.
So is the proposal that's in board docs, is that identical to what was provided?
It is
Or did-
not, they adjusted to add the extra month, and they also decreased the per pupil cost.
No, but all that's in board docs is your written proposal for the
Yeah. See, this
for the
is-
pilot.
Oh.
Is that the
It should be
same?
It should be the updated contract that is in there, which is adjusted to $14 per student and had the additional month of June added in there as well.
So it goes from now till June.
Now
February till
through
June.
all of June, yes.
But not the different numbers that we were talking about and really piloting it versus
Correct. We
the
can
small
still-
scale pilot versus large scale pilot.
Right, we can still do the small scale pilot. I don't know that we're gonna be able to have it impact the numbers that we would pay because it's a monthly cost unless we said we wanted to do all of February as that smaller scale pilot. So again, I'm still working through that with tutor.com and also with the building principals in terms of how that makes the most sense to deploy. We met this past week and then our meeting again tomorrow after the principals had a chance to go back to the teachers to determine what the best way to deploy that is for a smaller pilot. So we could, if we go with a month-long pilot, reduce that first month of it, the 500 students to the $14 per student, and then it would expand to the $845 for those remaining 3 months. So that would be a difference of It'd be yeah, it would be, it would be a smaller reduction than that. I'm sorry, the math was gonna be a little bit longer, but it would be a minimal reduction in cost.
Well, I think there's much more than dollars spent in costs here. I mean, there's there's a lot of resources to go behind doing it on a large scale versus a small scale. I guess I don't know what the ask is now. I mean, we came to committee and had suggestions, and now the supporting documents that are in board docs for the resolution are the same. So what are we being asked to?
You are being asked
to
do a contract that looks exactly the same as the previous contract, except that it is less. So it is less per student, and then it is also the addition of 1 full month. It could be reduced further once I continue to work with the principals in terms of how long we wanted to do that short scale pilot. And that would be reduced by 345 students for the first month of implementation. If we imagine that $14 per student extends over 5 months, that'd be about $3 per student that we would take off of those 345 students.
What is it?
I just was wondering how they can make money at $14 per student for 4 months.
Doug's commented that it does not want to start an online tutoring.
How do you make money?
I would anticipate that many districts do not hold accountable the use of the program, and that allows them to provide that level of pricing. It would be our intention to ensure that it was in fact available for our students, and then also that we would have the expectation that it was being used.
So my questions were similar to what has already been phrased, which is that the proposal document is exactly what we saw. So I was looking for what's going to be different. And I hear you saying you are pursuing still a concept of a smaller scale pilot, although it sounds like you and I are still on a different level in terms of what that looks like, because you're just talking about 500. That is not, that to me is still.
500 would be the minimum number of licenses that tutor.com will allow us to use. The principals are working on the numbers of students that would actually be used in the smaller scale pilot. Because we had a fairly short turnaround, I reached out to tutor.com, had them revise the contract, had them also meet the price of the other vendor. I met with the principals. They are meeting with the staff. They're coming back and meeting with the staff again. And with me again tomorrow. So I do apologize for not having that updated document in board docs. That had been my intention, but the wrong document.
Okay, but it sounds, I'll say, sounds like you are moving forward with pursuing a smaller scale, which I appreciate. Is there any issue?
No, I was gonna say, if you want to send that to me, I can actually upload it to Word docs, so you all can see it.
I don't think I have it filed within my, I don't think I
I
would be
just
able to
wanted to
pull it
offer
from
that as
here,
an
but
option I can
yeah,
do.
thank you though, Tyler.
And then the other questions that came about in our discussion were about measuring, and in particular, the idea of the two things. One, are the students who they benefited from the most truly using it? And number two, better measures that tell us that any gains we measure actually came from the tutoring as compared to just coming from
Correct.
And so I'd still say those are outstanding. I guess I'm potentially okay with moving forward on this for myself, if I know that in short order, we're going to get an update from you that's going to show progress on those two topics, then I guess I can I'm trying to be supportive while still saying like, I think we need to address these things.
Absolutely, and I did again meet with the principals on that, who are going back to meet with their team, which I think they've already done. And then we're coming back again on tomorrow to meet on that and to determine what it is the teachers feel like is a tenable measure that will give them that impact number that you were looking for.
Well, but it's also about how you construct the pilot. In some cases, some of the classes you were selecting,
We're doing like 7th grade.
you have opportunity to do side by side.
Correct. And we'd also sort of talked, I think, about not wanting to withhold a resource from a group of students either. So yes, we absolutely talked about the fact that we have English 10, for example, some sections of English 10 that would be offered this and some sections of English 10 that would not. Therefore, we have that ability to compare those two in the pilot. So I think, I mean, again, we can take another month if you want. I would think if we're going to have a short-term pilot, to try to do that in February and then try to impact change in a larger pilot over March, April, and May, it's going to be hard to really know the impact of that in that short period of time. So again, we were trying to work through that, and I was trying to bring this back to you as quickly as possible, given the number of items that you wanted to see sort of moved since our meeting last week. Yep, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, and just as kind of a side note, I know a number of teachers that have been asking and have been really excited and interested in engaging it. And just in my own experience, that is a huge indicator, a pre-indicator of success in terms of just buying in and engagement. So I think once they get the tool in their hands, I'm excited to see what it can do.
All right, other comments or questions from board members on the motion? Tina?
It sounds like you have a good handle on this. You have a good process associated with it. You understand the parameters of it. It may just not be detailed in this document. However, you understand the sentiment of it. And
Absolutely. I
progress
feel
and
like
you've moved as
very good
quickly as you can.
I have moved as quickly as I possibly could from the meeting that we had last week on this to try to put into place those different revisions. I'm very excited about the opportunity to pilot this. I don't know if it's going to be a successful pilot or not, but to me, it seems like a resource with a whole lot of upside. In addition to that, we will be the only district in the state of Wisconsin employing this. We sought this out. We found something that was unique and different and had the opportunity to serve our students 24/7. I just think there's a lot of upside. I would like to move forward with it. And I think our staff would like to move forward with it. And I think it would be a big win for our students and our families.
Katie?
I forgot to ask this at our fiscal and HR meeting. Is this something that Discovery Academy would have access to?
Not as we currently have it proposed. eCampus also has talked about wanting access to potentially some seats in this. Again, not as we currently have it proposed, but we do have the ability to play around with those numbers as we do the final definition of how many seats are we going to invest in and the scale of the pilot. But it certainly is on the table, and if not now, in the following year, should the board decide to move forward with a full scale implementation.
And then do we have to revote if we want to use this over the summer? Does that have to come to a vote?
Well, we have it through June, so we could use it through June in summer school in that regard. But we'd have to, if we we're going to extend it through July, yes, I think it would be a smaller than $20,000 item as it is now. However, we would probably want to bring it back to discuss the evaluation of the pilot before making the decision to move forward with it.
I did a little research and online, here we donated $100,000 to receive.
Oh, nice.
Back on August 31st.
Oh, well, look at that. All right. Well, I appreciate that because I asked specifically and they said no. That's fantastic because we should see if they would donate to us. Thank you. That's. I see that.
All right.
To me,
Dave?
To me, Cassandra, the idea of being able to have the measurements that Tony was talking about so that we know what the impact of this is more important to me than the number of seats and the dollars that are spent. If we have to let seats, because they only sell us 500, if we only want to use 300 for the first 45 days so that we get those solid measurements and we know where we're going, that has more value to me than chasing the dollar for a short period of time.
No,
So I think we got to make sure we nail those measurements so we know the effect of this as we go on, because this is another one of those reoccurring things that if we don't have the answers up front, we're going to go and say, well, we don't know what will happen if we get rid of it because we don't know what happened when we put it in place. So.
Well, and I certainly appreciate that. And just because we have the 500 seats doesn't mean we need to use the 500 seats in that pilot. It is just that is the minimum number that they were willing to go to.
All right. There's nothing else on this, then we'll do a roll call vote, please.
David Smith,
Yes.
Paul Van Langenberg, yes. Doug Will,
Yes.
Tony Arnett,
Yes.
Tina Johnson,
Yes.
Steve Caulfield,
Yes.
Katie Najarian,
Yes.
David Schrader.
Yes.
And the motion carries. That is our last item under action items for this evening. So it brings us to public input. This is the second time in the agenda which members of the public can address the board. And ask you to raise your hand if you're in person, step up to the table when recognized, give your name and address. If you are online, again, please use the raise your hand feature and we will recognize you. But again, start your remark with your name and address. Is there anyone like to be recognized? Yes, please.
Tracy Finch, West Main Street. I just want to refresh for my last two questions. First, which is more detrimental to learning and mental health, math or virtual learning? And then second, is the board so strongly against masking in schools that you're willing to pause virtual learning, even though it is more detrimental to the education and mental health than wearing a mask in school? I recently found now, by sitting here, is that the Oconomowoc School District is doing actually a correct way, that they're giving the statistics, they're giving the numbers. If certain things get to a certain level, then they wear a mask. Then if like they get over 12.5%, it's a school district-wide mask mandate. And they even say if it gets to over 12.5 or even up to 20%, then they're going virtual. So parents have the notification that they know when something's going to happen. Oconomowoc School District is actually doing the right thing compared to you guys that aren't, that just want to make one person make a decision. And it seems like, why don't you follow Oconomowoc, since you guys seem to be so good at following other school districts and what you want to do, like making everything optional. So that's all I wanted to say was go look at Oconomowoc School District because they got the mitigations that are actually decent enough to actually follow and everything else.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience this evening? Please in the back, sir.
James Vogel, W5993 County Road T. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that's still thinking clearly and can keep things in a realistic perspective. I'm sorry to see that there's those that are still being manipulated by the few here. I'm very sorry to see that. I would hope you would all consider turning off your media and avoiding the propaganda. With that being said, I'd like to offer some hope for those caught in this mass psychosis. I would invite you to listen to a very helpful resource. I find it very helpful myself. It's a Christian radio station out of Milwaukee called WVCY 107.7 FM. They have a show on at 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I would invite all of you, even the ones that see what's going on. It's called Crosstalk. Crosstalk from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They give you a very good perspective and it might help your all well-being. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please up front.
Katie Vanderlinden, N8071 High Road, Watertown. Not going to talk about COVID or masks or anything else. We talked about open enrollment. We talked about the importance of getting students here because we have a really great school system. First, I should have said thank you, by the way, for still being here and being a part of our school board. One thing I do notice is when I look around the room, everyone looks just like me. 80% of our student body looks like me. 20% doesn't. I look to see who is running for school board. Don't see much diversity in that group either. I would remind us that not everyone is here at the table. That we may write invitations or we may try to open it up for everybody, but we're missing at least 20% who identify as a different race or ethnicity. I know of students who are multiracial, who go by one or the other or whatever, just so they can fit in more. But I just want us to be aware that as we look for how to bring in more students and as the world gets more diverse, our leadership needs to reflect that. So maybe when we look at who sits on committees or how we invite people to the table, we remember that there's different ways of invitations and there's different ways to reach people. So I invite us as we look to the future and the next meetings, and the next boards and the next groups, that we look who's at the table, who's invited to the table. And if everyone at the table looks just like you or I, maybe we're missing a few voices that need to be heard.
All right, thank you. Anyone else in the room? I do not see anyone online. So therefore, I'll ask for a motion to go into closed session for the reasons stated in the agenda. For those present, we do not anticipate Any action occurring after this closed session? Do I hear a motion? Moved by Katie, seconded by Tina. Roll call vote, please.
David Smith,
Yes.
Paul Van Langenberg, yes. Doug Will,
Yes.
Tony Arnett,
Yes.
Tina Johnson,
Yes.
Steve Caulfield,
Yes.
Miriam,
Yes, no.
David Schrader.
Yes.
All right, we are closed session. We seem to be moving forward. We'll just wait a moment. How do you make me?